Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Heather King with Hope Abounds, the Education Director, and I'm extremely excited to welcome Kendall Mariah with Unapologetic Ministries today. You know, what Hope Abounds does is we help patients that have cancer, right? But there's lots of crises within multiple people's lives, whether it's the patient, whether it's the family members, the children, siblings, and we talk all the time about the physical aspect of cancer and the mental aspect of cancer. But the spiritual aspect is something that we at Hope Abounds feel is so important, and we want to incorporate, and that's why we're so excited to have you to be able to tell us a little bit about your ministry and how it's, then we're going to talk about how it's incorporated into what we're doing at Hope Abounds.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to be here today. And Unapologetic started for me a few years ago, but I will admit that having faith and being a Christian woman is something that I was brought up in. This is not something that started just a couple years ago. That seed was planted early on. But like many Christians, it is a tool in our toolbox, and it's not necessarily something we're dependent on. It's something we keep in our back pocket. And I knew all the answers to the Bible school questions. I knew how to play by the rules, and I played by the rules. And I had what I consider a habitual Christian relationship with God, where I showed up, I did the right thing, and I knew the right answer. But it wasn't until 2014 when I had an unexpected diagnosis that kind of shifted everything for me. It put your life on hold. It shook everything up and kind of changed the trajectory of my future. And when that happened, I had a large tumor, cyst, whatever you want to call it, in my abdomen, and they weren't sure if it was cancerous or not. And here I was, a senior in college, and I thought, Lord, please don't let it be my will to be the martyr for ovarian cancer, because that was my sorority philanthropy. And I knew I had the signs and the symptoms, which we know we don't want to admit to, but I was like, I cannot believe this could be my path. Well, I spent that week really in prayer and a lot of worry before my surgery, because we wouldn't know the results till then. And thankfully that wasn't my path. But after going through that, and they had to remove part of my female organs, I went through a lot of changes in my body. Going through being 22 is not easy as it is. I was planning a wedding, trying to graduate college with 3 degrees in 4 years. It was just a lot going on. And then you add in, I was going through partial menopause. So I was trying to take final exams and having hot flashes.
Wow.
And it was just a hot mess of a time. And so I was just doing my best to get through. You know how we go in that autopilot of just get it done. And so I did. But what happened in that is I wasn't taking the time to process what was happening. I wasn't taking time to process, that almost mourning of the fact that I may not be able to have children, processing just how much would change because of this, the struggles that I would go through in the future. I had been diagnosed with anxiety and was struggling with depression. And it wasn't until the 1-year mark of my surgery that I really fell into a deep, dark depression and a season of anxiety and having bouts of paranoia that I really realized the depth in which things had changed. And it was a time in which my faith was the thing that I had to depend on, because there was nothing else left. Medication wasn't really working. I was trying to find resources online, but it wasn't there, because as a Christian, I knew that God could heal this, but I didn't know what I needed to do to get healed. I knew that God could help change my mentality, but I didn't know what to do to change my mentality. So I needed practical steps, and I couldn't find them. And it was very frustrating. It'd be kind of like needing to lose weight, but never having access to a diet plan. And that's what I felt like. I needed things to shift, but I had no way of doing it. And so God was showing me so many new things, that I was learning things like empathy and grace, because I was having to receive it on such high levels, because I was no longer myself, and I was really going through a difficult time. Meanwhile, being 3,000 miles away from home with my newly married husband who's in the Army, which adds layers and layers and layers of complicatedness as you're going through these things. And God kind of reinforced something to me my mama had told me growing up. And if there's not something out there that you need or want, it's your job to create it. And so I had to create what I was missing. And there was Unapologetic. And I had, in past years, knew that I was called to ministry, but I doubted with whether to go to divinity school or not, because I am a little bit of a loose cannon. I know that God has put certain things in me for a certain reason, and I didn't want that watered down version. And I also didn't know how that would pan out with being an Army wife. Moving around and trying to get a graduate degree just didn't seem to be my path. And so when I started Unapologetic, I started out by saying, I'm not a theologian. I'm not even your pastor. I don't have all the answers, but what I do have is experience, and I do have the Word of God, and I have truth. And we're just going to lean on it together, and we're going to sit in the crap together and work through it. And you would be amazed at the amount of people that came out of the woodwork that were desperate for that same message, and just to hear that they're not alone. So, I personally have never gone through cancer or that diagnosis, but I've seen how it affects families, and I've seen how other illnesses and, sudden life changes for people. It could be the sudden loss of a parent, or maybe a tragic situation in your own life shifts things.
Absolutely.
And how in that shifting, it creates a gap, because you have your expectation of what you thought was going to happen versus your reality. And when those things shift, like an earthquake, that gap comes in that wasn't there before. And that's a gap only God can fill. Alcohol won't fill it. Drugs won't fill it. Addiction to shopping won't even fill it, even though there's been times when I've tried. We have to fill that with God. And so I just take a practical approach to trying to teach people the Word and prayer and how to depend on God when we wish that we had control, but we don't. So that's kind of the short but not so short story of Unapologetic.
No, and that's great, because honestly what you're saying, I'm sure so many people can relate to, whether it is a cancer diagnosis or something else going on in their life.
Right.
We all reach these points where we need to fill that gap. And you're right. The only thing that really does fill it is God. So I think it's great that you saw that need and you did what your mom told you to do, and you went ahead and stepped in.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. So I know that you do this on Facebook Live, correct?
Correct.
So 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yep.
And we're going to make sure that everybody does have the information on how to access that. But so tell us a little bit just about how long the time is when you're on Facebook and how you decide what to cover.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we started out as a blog where I was just kind of typing out my experiences and saying, this is what I'm going through. But, and it wasn't even from a Bible study. It was more of this is an anecdotal version of how I'm battling anxiety. This is how I've worked through depression or transition, different difficult experiences, because I wanted to talk about the hard stuff. The thing that your church probably doesn't want to talk about on Sunday morning because it's a little awkward for everybody, but everyone's okay in their own home with their phone or their laptop listening to or being a part of the conversation of.
Sure.
And what I kept getting people telling me is, man, I really wish that we could get together and have these conversations. And, I do live, I started in Washington and then was in Oklahoma and now I was in Tennessee and travel back and forth to North Carolina. And so there was really no way of creating a physical Bible study with people that I could get in front of them. And so it started out with, I created this little Facebook group just last year. This has been the newest edition of Unapologetic, and it's a group with a Bible study or a word of encouragement. And we've worked through now 5 books of the Bible, which is the coolest thing to me. And I kind of call it my own version of divinity school. This was God's way of making sure I still studied the Word because He's holding me accountable to teach others. And we don't make it complicated. I don't make you go buy a textbook. There's no additional Bible study book. I tell people, if you've got a Bible or your iPhone with a Bible app or just a journal, you're going to get something out of it. And so we just work through a book of the Bible, starting in chapter 1. And so we just finished Joshua, and so we'd had 5 weeks or 20 weeks of that, but we'd had this past time James in 5 weeks of that. And so we just kind of worked through it together. And the neatest thing is being live, you could ask me a question. You say, well, Kendall, my Bible actually is this version and it uses this word. Why do you think they might have changed that? And so it creates conversation. And it's the coolest thing to me because I have people all the way from South Africa to the Ukraine who tune in.
Wow.
And so you're in a pretty small group for considering how big the world is, in conversation with people that you never have to be in the room with. So you could be in the pajamas, or people can be on their way home from work listening to it. And to me, that's the neatest thing, because your comfort level. I've had people who have not been to church in years because they didn't feel comfortable, or they had a bad experience, or people who have, like myself, grew up habitual as a Christian, where it never got below the surface, in their heart, and they're trying to figure out how do they dig deeper. So we have people kind of all over the spectrum is where they are in their faith walk, and they feel safe to log in, and they're a part of this tribe. We have members who ask for prayer requests, and members who celebrate things, or they like to share their Bible journaling with each other. And to me, that is the biggest blessing, to see that this community is more than me just preaching or
Right.
teaching every week. And so they're walking this path in prayer with me of infertility now, as that's kind of been our newest obstacle in my personal life. And I just like to talk from a place of, I'm still going through things. Though my faith is bigger and stronger, I'm still daily having to deal with things. And I think when we get saved, we're often under the influence that life's going to go like this. And that's just not the case. Life is still going to have ups and downs, but the difference is we know the power and authority of Christ, and we have the hope in salvation, and so we can approach it differently. Instead of looking at life of mountain and valleys, we look at it as a roller coaster, and we know what goes up must come down, and vice versa. And so it's a different take than your church probably does. It's not all sunshines and rainbows, and we're okay to sit with that and acknowledge that this season of life might be really hard. It might suck, and it might make you want to kick and scream and cry. But that's okay. Just don't build a tent and live there forever.
Sure. And many of the people that are probably going to be watching this, just because Hope Abounds is
Right.
about cancer patients, will probably be going through that cancer journey somewhere along that cancer journey. And it's just nice that you are so real and honest about that your life isn't perfect either. Because, honestly, none of our lives are perfect.
Right.
As hard as you try.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing's perfect, but
No way.
it's nice. I'm sure that's comforting to everyone that watches, and hopefully to all the Hope Abounds family and patients and everyone else that starts watching as well.
Yeah, and I try to acknowledge that, and the fact that people who are a part of unapologetic ministry are there for a reason. They didn't join because life was perfect. They joined because they're going through hard things like I was when I started, because they know that's our mission. And so, like last night, we're in between Bible studies, so I always take a week off so I have time to prepare to jump into the new one. And last night, I talked about dealing with the hustle and bustle of this last 2 months of the year, because we all know it's crazy. And I know that we can't just always walk away from crazy. Sometimes that's just life. And so last night we talked about bringing God into the crazy. He's not scared of it. He's not intimidated by it. He is not worried about it. But he will sit there with you in the midst of the crazy, of the hustle and bustle of life, just like he sat in the dark corner of my bedroom when I was in the fetal position crying and just held me. That he will meet you wherever you are. And so I try to come from the angle of knowing that a lot of us are going through things, and maybe that's treatment for cancer, or maybe you're like me and you're in a season of waiting. Maybe you're waiting for healing. Maybe you're waiting for a baby. Maybe you're waiting for an answer for a test. I don't know, but we have so many examples in the Bible of how God uses those seasons to refine us. So I do always try to challenge people at the end of whatever I'm speaking about with something that they can take forward tangibly and apply to their life. So last night I just challenged people to invite God into whatever you're going through, and encourage him to be your business partner, encourage him to come in as your healer, and then give that worry of your healing, that worry of your financial success with business to him, and say, I'm giving this to you, and I have hope that you'll figure it out so I don't have to. And I know for me that gives me a peace of mind that, as a control freak like I am, that I don't have to worry about it, that someone else is handling it.
Right.
And as much perfectionist I am, I'm not perfect, but he is. So he's the only person that can fill that gap.
Absolutely. Yep. No, I just think that, this has been a piece that's always behind the scenes of Hope Abounds, the spiritual piece. But having you now be part of this is going to truly fill in the gap for us and for our patients. So we're definitely excited to have you here. In the future, we're going to be obviously listening to all the different, I guess, your Facebook Live sessions. I guess it's a webcast, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
So the webcast that you'll be doing, but then you're also going to be helping out with some of our patient education in the future moving forward for 2019.
We are.
Talking about the spiritual aspect of everything.
We are, and we're actually looking into creating some specific content for Hope Abounds. So for people that could download a 5-session Bible study of having hope in a dark season. And to where, you could sit and watch it. If you're like me, I'm a binge watcher. I need it all right now. And so I might sit and watch all 5 sessions tonight. But for somebody else who no longer feels like going to church, or maybe has never been to church, but they've got just 1 hour a week, when that child takes the Sunday afternoon nap, or 1 hour while you're sitting receiving treatment, that you can listen to it. And it just gives you hope in that dark spot to help you change, so you can see the light amongst the darkness. And that oftentimes we are our own light amongst the darkness, because we are that reflection of God.
Absolutely. So we're excited to have you as part of Hope Abounds. Do you want to share just a story of how you came to find Hope Abounds, or how Hope Abounds found you a little bit, just a background for people who want to know?
So I have known Kenny and Elizabeth since I was a child. My dad and Kenny are great friends in the photography world, and just sitting here today brought back memories of coming in here as a little girl, when we would come and visit them in Wilmington, as we live about an hour and a half inland in North Carolina. And I have been, of course, Facebook friends with Kenny and Elizabeth since the social revolution that we are in. And it's funny how they are some of the people that have paid attention and watched my ministry from the beginning, but I haven't always known that. We're oftentimes aware of the people that participate in our lives on the daily basis, or the people that like, comment, and share, because you can physically see that. But I tell people all the time, there's people on the sidelines that you don't know are there. And Miss Elizabeth has been watching for several months and weeks and over a year now, just to see how things progress and how God has really tightly aligned our missions in ways that we probably wouldn't have ever thought to begin with. And so in a not so coincidental way, they ran into my parents this summer in town when they came to talk about Hope Abounds, and mentioned they need help with rebranding, which is the business work that I do. And my dad kind of said, well, that's the work Kendall does. And so it's funny how God gets you in with one thing, and then he ties something in along that you might not necessarily have put together. And so they approached me with this a few months ago, and I cannot even tell you how excited I am, because I have a passion for helping people in their dark seasons, because I'm like, if you can find God in the hard times in life, then when you're in a good time of life, you're going to be the brightest light there is, and there's going to be an unstoppable faith about you. And so I probably said yes before she had asked the question, and was so excited to partner with them. So I can't wait to see, all the ideas that we get to bring to fruition through both the branding and the partnership with Unapologetic, because I do think it is endless, and that our missions are so closely aligned that we're going to see God multiply what we are going to plant here together.
Absolutely. Well, we're extremely excited that you're going to be part of the Hope Abounds family, and that we're able to partner with you and Unapologetic Ministries. And there will be information provided to everyone on how to tap into listening to these amazing webcasts moving forward. And I just really want to thank you for all you do, and the light that you bring to this world, and just to be part of what we're doing.
I'm so excited. There's a great team here, and I can't wait to see what we do in 2019.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. So, and thank you all for listening today, and definitely make sure you tune in to Unapologetic Ministries in the near future.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you later.